There is a clay tablet in the British Museum right now, smaller than an adult hand, 12 centimeters of cracked mud, and it is the oldest map of the world ever found. It draws the Earth as a flat disk, ringed by water, the scribe labeled the Bitter River. And past that water, where modern maps show nothing, this one marks regions, 8 of them. One label reads, "Where the sun is not seen." The first page of the Bible describes the same universe, the same disk, the same waters overhead, sealed under something Genesis calls a Raqia, a word English Bibles still soften today. So what did the people who wrote Genesis believe was above their heads? And what did Babylon believe waited beyond the edge of the world? That map is real. Its number is BM92687, and scholars call it the Imago Mundi, the Babylonian map of the world. Nothing here is invented. Every object has a number, every quote a published translation. Here is the plan. First, the Hebrew word in Genesis 1 that means hammered metal, and the translators who softened it. Second, the map, both sides, because the back is the part almost nobody reads aloud. Third, the 3 people who dug it up, completed it, and decoded it. And at the end, one detail that points the map and the book of Genesis at the same mountain. If that sounds like your kind of history, subscribe. Now, the sky first. Start with the sky. Not as it is, as the ancient world drew it. For over 1,000 years, across rival empires, the drawing barely changed. Scholars call it ancient Near Eastern cosmology, and it works like a building with 3 floors. The underworld below. A flat disk of earth in the middle, resting on water, ringed by water. And the strange top floor. Above the clouds, the ancient mind placed an ocean, a literal sea hanging over every city. The only thing holding it back was the roof of the world, not clouds, not atmosphere. A roof. Rain in this picture is not condensation. Rain is leakage. When a storm breaks, something up there has opened. That thought returns later, with a flood attached. None of this is fringe. The standard reference is Wayne Horowitz's Mesopotamian cosmic geography. And the striking part is not that one nation imagined a roofed world. They all did. Babylon, Assyria, Egypt, Israel, different gods, one floor plan. The Hebrew version became the opening page of Genesis, but the Babylonian version got something better than words. Somebody drew it, the only surviving map of that 3-story universe. And the man who pulled it from a ruin mound in Iraq spent his whole life treated as if he stood outside the world he had found. His name was Hormuzd Rassam, and almost nobody knows it. Born in 1826 in Mosul, an Assyrian Christian, a native of the very lands archaeology was carving open. In 1846, the excavator Austin Henry Laird hired him at Nimrud, not as a scholar, as a paymaster. Within a few years, he ran the digs himself. The first Middle Eastern-born archaeologist of the modern era. His finds read like the British Museum's trophy shelf. The Epic of Gilgamesh tablets, the gates of Balawat, the Cyrus cylinder. Then, between 1880 and 1882, at Tel Abu Haba north of Babylon, he opened the city of Sippar and the temple of its patron god, Shamash. Shamash was the god of the sun. That name matters. It comes back at the very end, and when it does, it lands hard. Out of Sippar came roughly 50,000 clay tablets. Buried in that avalanche was a broken one, 12 centimeters tall, with a circle inscribed on its face. It entered the museum in 1882, and no one translated it until 1889. For 7 years, the oldest map of the world sat in a drawer, filed as one more receipt from a dead city. Here is what the scribe drew: the earth, a disk, the Euphrates, top to bottom, Babylon on the river, a mountain region called Urartu marked, that name returns too, and around everything, a ring of water labeled Maritu, the bitter river, circling the world like a moat. Beyond it, triangles, spikes of land radiating into the unknown. The text counts 8 of these far regions, the Nagu, though the tablet is broken and not all survive. 8 names beyond the edge. The front is the famous side, but the tablet is written on both faces, and the back is where a curiosity turns into a collision. First, though, the other exhibit, a single Hebrew word on the first page of Genesis. Genesis chapter 1 verse 6, King James Version. Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Firmament. In modern English, the word is a fossil. The Hebrew underneath it is raqa, Strong's entry H, 7549. And it appears 9 times in Genesis chapter 1 alone. The creation account is built around it. The root is the verb raqa, to beat, to hammer, to pound flat, a metalworker's verb. The same root appears in Exodus 39:3, on the gold leaf for the priestly garments. They did beat the gold into thin plates. What a goldsmith does to gold with a hammer is, by the grammar of Genesis, what was done to the sky. And this is not a YouTube reading. The Standard Lexicon of Biblical Hebrew, Brown Driver Briggs, defines Raqia as a solid expanse and adds, as if beaten out. The word means hammered, and a solid sky should have openings. Genesis 7:11, the day the flood begins. The windows of heaven were opened. An expanse of empty air does not have windows. A metaphor does not hold an ocean. So the question turns the whole video. What if Raqia was never poetry? What if the writer of Genesis 1 was describing, in plain technical vocabulary, the architecture he believed stood overhead? A hammered ceiling, a sea on top, windows that open, not a hymn, a blueprint. And if that sounds like a conspiracy theory, here comes the correction, the strangest fact in the whole affair. The first people to put the solid sky in writing were not skeptics and not YouTubers. They were Jewish scholars, translating their own scripture 23 centuries ago, and they left a paper trail. The chain has 3 links, public, everyone checkable tonight against a library copy. Link 1, Alexandria, 3rd century BC. Jewish translators render the Hebrew scriptures into Greek, the Septuagint. For Raqia, they choose stereoma from stereos, solid, firm. The first translators in history to render the word rendered it solid. Link 2. Around the year 405, Jerome completes the Latin Vulgate and writes firmamentum from firmus, firm, braced. English Bibles carried that Latin word across unchanged. The only reason they say firmament at all. Firmament is not a translation. It is an heirloom. Link 3. The modern Bibles, where the chain splits in public. The English Standard Version prints expanse, open, airy, compatible with satellites. The New International Version prints vault, a curved stone ceiling, halfway honest. And the New Revised Standard Version, the translation assigned in universities and seminaries, prints dome. Genesis 1:6 in the NRSV. Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters. The academic Bible says dome. That is the part the viral videos never show. The Bible describes a solid dome as not a fringe claim scholarship laughs at. Inside the literature, it sits close to the boring consensus. In 1991, the Westminster Theological Journal, an evangelical academic journal, published Paul Seeley's study, The Firmament and the Water Above. His conclusion was blunt. By the ordinary rules of Hebrew grammar, the Raqia of Genesis 1 is literally solid. He was not attacking the Bible, he was reading it. So the suppression story is upside down. The Septuagint published the solid sky 23 centuries ago. The NRSV prints dome today on page 1. If this is a conspiracy, it keeps its receipts in every major library on Earth. The cover-up, if it exists, is somewhere stranger, and that thread stays open until the end. A hammered sheet over the world then? But a word cannot say what lies past its far edge, beyond the ocean that rings the land. For that, history preserved exactly one drawing, and the drawing has a back. Back to the tablet. B M92687. The Imago Mundi. The front is the picture. The disc, Babylon, the bitter river, the triangles. But the tablet speaks on both faces. The scholarly edition is Wayne Horowitz's. And by his translation, even the front opens with pure cosmology, cataloging beasts which Marduk created on top of the restless sea, real animals and a scorpion man in one breath. Then the tablet turns over, and the back is a travel guide to the regions beyond the world. The reverse walks through the Nagu one by one, in a fixed formula like a gazetteer, according to Horowitz. To the fourth region, where you travel 7 leagues, of the third, a winged bird cannot safely complete its journey, and the most famous line labels the northern triangle, Great Wall, 6 leagues in between where the sun is not seen. Recorded not as legend but as logistics. The tablet even names who went out there. One of the 3 travelers is Utnapishtim, the survivor of the Babylonian flood, the Babylonian Noah. According to the tablet, his address is out there, beyond the bitter river, where maps end, which brings the story to 2024, and to British Museum cuneiform specialist Irving Finkel. In Curator's Corner, he read the reverse aloud and stopped at a phrase generations had skimmed past. The traveler will pass something as thick as a parsiktu vessel. A parsiktu is a rare Babylonian measure, and Finkel knew where else it appears. In the flood tradition, giving the thickness of the walls of the ark. Read with Babylonian eyes, the back of the map tells the traveler what to look for beyond the floodwaters. The hull of the great ship, where Utnapishtim's story left it. So the oldest map of the world doubles as directions to the ark. And now the 2 halves of this video meet. The map marks Urartu, the mountain country of the north, the Akkadian form of a place every reader of Genesis knows. Ararat, Genesis 8:4. And the ark rested upon the mountains of Ararat. 2 scriptures, 1 mountain, written in different empires in different languages for different gods. And they point their flood survivors at the same high ground. The overlap runs to the core, and the proof sleeps in the same museum, a short walk from the map. The Enuma Elish, the Babylonian epic of creation, came out of the library of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh. Its first modern account in 1876 carried a title that caused exactly the scandal it sounds like. The Chaldean account of Genesis. In Tablet 4, the god Marduk defeats Tiamat, goddess of the Salt Sea. In W.G. Lambert's translation, lines 137 to 140, he split her into 2 like a dried fish. One half of her he set up and stretched out as the heavens. He stretched the skin and appointed a watch. with the instruction not to let her waters escape. Now, Genesis 1. A Raqia, a hammered sheet, placed in the midst of the waters to divide the waters from the waters. The Hebrew has no Tiamat and no battle. One God speaks and the sheet exists. But the machine is the same machine, and both texts give it doors. Tablet 5 of the Enuma Elish. He opened great gates on both sides. He made strong the bolt on the left and on the right. Gates for the sun with bolts. And Genesis 7:11. The windows of heaven were opened. Gates in Babylon, windows in Genesis. Same machinery, different theologian. Scholars have a sober name for this. Shared ancient Near Eastern cosmology. Genesis 1 speaks the standard cosmological language of its time. The same world that produced the Enuma Elish and the Imago Mundi. The argument was never about what these texts describe. It is about what to do with it. And before that argument gets its hearing, one more exhibit. The universe these documents share did not die with Babylon. Pieces of it are still in circulation, in daily use, by billions of people. Here is where this stops being about Babylon, because the building never quite fell. You live on its ground floor. You have been speaking this cosmology your whole life. When the rain hammers down and you say, "The heavens opened," that is Genesis 7:11. Windows in the roof of the world swinging wide. You say it without believing a word of it. But the phrase was minted somewhere under a solid sky. When you call the sky the vault of heaven, you are quoting a translator's compromise with an inconvenient Hebrew noun. When you picture heaven as up, as a place overhead just past a ceiling, you are standing inside the three-story building of ancient Near Eastern cosmology. Intact, load-bearing, never demolished, just wallpapered. And the map is still there, the object itself in London right now. You could stand in front of it this afternoon. A cracked brown tablet smaller than your hand, our species' oldest surviving attempt to draw everything. So stand at that glass and ask the question this whole video has been building toward. What if the writers of Genesis were not poets gesturing at infinity? What if they were honest witnesses, reporting the universe exactly as everyone they had ever met could see it? A flat earth, a metal sky, an ocean upstairs, and windows that open when it rains. Not liars, not mystics, witnesses. Witnesses of a world that was never there. Now, the other side of the scale, because it has earned a fair hearing, and because this channel does not sell certainty, ask a mainstream biblical scholar, and the answer is calm. Yes, Raqia means something solid. The lexicons are not in dispute. Yes, Genesis shares Babylon's cosmology. And no, none of it makes the text a lie. Ancient authors describe the sky as it looks from the ground, the same way we say sunrise without believing the sun moves. Genesis 1 is not failed astronomy. It is theology, written inside the cosmology of its century. Even Seeley framed it that way. The message is the point. The cosmology is the wrapping paper. Their argument is strong, and on the history, they are simply right. There was no smoke-filled room. No council voted to hide a dome. Just translators doing their best for the readers in front of them. But one loose end refuses to lie flat. If the solid sky is settled, harmless, ancient history, why is the word still being softened right now in the present tense? The scholar's translation has printed dome since 1989. The Bibles in actual circulation, the ones in hotel drawers and gift shops, print expanse and vault. Renderings chosen because they decline to commit. Committees revise everything. archaic verbs, gender language, new manuscripts. Yet, on this one noun, the most widely read Bibles hold a line the lexicons abandoned generations ago. No memo explains it. Only thousands of small decisions all leaning one way, away from the hammer. And that is stranger than a conspiracy. A cover-up has authors, meetings, fingerprints. This has none. Just a word drifting softer in the pews while it drifts harder in the seminars. Two Bibles pulling apart. The one that gets studied and the one that gets sold. No one decided this. Everyone did. One promise is still unpaid. The god of Sippar. But the people of this story come first because no one else tells their part. Hormuzd Rassam, the man from Mosul who found the map, spent his last decades fighting for his name. In 1893, he sued E.A. Wallace Budge, the British Museum's own keeper, a man regular viewers of this channel have already met, smuggling the papyrus of Annie out of Egypt after Budge accused his relatives of theft. Rassam won. It barely mattered. In 1910, the discoverer of the Gilgamesh tablets, the Cyrus cylinder, and the map of the world died on the English coast, mostly forgotten. The map he found was incomplete, a triangle broken off. It stayed that way for more than a century, until 1995, when a volunteer named Edith Horsley, a student in Finkel's evening cuneiform classes, was sorting unidentified fragments and found a sliver of clay that fit the broken edge. It had been inside the museum the whole time, waiting a century for someone with no credentials and infinite patience. An evening class volunteer completed the oldest map of the world. And in 2024, Finkel told the whole story on camera, and the little tablet from Sippar went viral around the planet, found by a defamed man, completed by a volunteer, decoded on YouTube. The map crossed 26 centuries on the patience of people nobody paid attention to, which leaves the detail this video saved for last. The map came out of Sippar, out of the precinct of the temple of Shamash, the god of the sun, and the same tablet marks, beyond the edge of the world, the Great Wall, where the sun is not seen. For some 2,400 years, the only surviving description of the land the sun cannot reach lay buried in the city of the sun god, while the sun rose and set above it, unable to touch it. The irony needed no author, it only needed time. Genesis says the sky was hammered out the way a goldsmith hammers gold. Babylon drew where the hammered world ended and the darkness began. Both books survived their empires. Both point at the same mountain. And the map itself, smaller than a hand, sits in its London case tonight, still showing anyone who stops exactly where the edge of the world is. On the side, almost no one reads. The edge was never hidden. It was only never read aloud. Next on this channel, the flood story written 1,000 years before Genesis, and the king list that names who ruled before it.